emailed us? Where are people supposed to be looking for this information?
I call this meeting of the Davenport School Board to order.
She said she looked it up on the district website.
School board meetings are now open to the public, but the district will comply with the Iowa Department of Public Health and the governor's recommendations as to gatherings and social distancing. To comply with the 6-foot social distancing directive, the boardroom has been arranged to allow for 6 feet between attendees. This, however, has resulted in a limit being placed on the number of individuals from the public who may attend in person. Capacity of the room to allow for social distancing is 30 members of the public. Masks are required to be worn in the boardroom, but you may remove your mask if you speak. As with prior board meetings, you may access the board meeting remotely as well, but open forum will be in person only. Director Snyder, would you read the board priorities, please?
Our priorities read as follows. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. And to direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Director Hayes, would you please read the mission and vision statements?
And I'll be happy to. The mission statements to enhance each student's ability by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. The vision statement is education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Any board reports? Director Klein-Jerome?
I'd like to thank John Flynn and the administrative staff at Central. They allowed me to attend the Monday morning in-service at the building. I thought it was very well done. Concerns of health and safety well addressed. Concerns for the anxiety that was people returning. I walked out of there that morning and was very impressed with how they have approached it and covered things. Teachers I've talked to since then have said, you know, they went in with some anxiety and they felt good about it. They were pleased with the way things went. So nice job, and thank you for allowing me to attend.
Director Hayes?
The board would like to extend our deepest condolences to the Hill family in the passing of Lucius Hill, who was one of our employees that passed just recently.
Director Beck?
I was just going to take a second to fill in the board on the work of the policy committee, if that's okay. So you may remember back in the, I don't know, February maybe, we approved paying for an IASB policy audit. And so what they do is they go through our policy manual and make sure that it's compliant with all mandatory policies, and then they provide suggestions based on their templates. So we got the results of that in late June, and we finally had a chance to come together as a committee, and we have decided that there's so much in our policy manual that really should be administrative regulations. We've got a couple things missing, and there's a lot of policies that the IASB suggests, but we don't have anything about. So we are going to spend the next, we set a deadline of a year, but hopefully it won't take that long, to essentially revamp our entire policy manual so that it is streamlined, meets our needs, and fits better with the IASB suggested policies, which are adopted by most of the major, the numbering system, which are adopted by most of the major districts in the state, which will allow people to find our policies more easily, including us. And so just to put that on your radar, at a certain point, what we're doing is we're going to work through the manual, and then anything that has to be taken care of right now will come up as usual. So you may be asked to vote on policies. But sometime before the end of the year, of the calendar year from now, we will bring to you basically a brand new policy manual and say we would like to adopt this policy manual, and it will supersede our old policy manual. So the decision of the committee was to get everything in order and then just pass it in one fell swoop rather than piecemeal voting, so that we don't have a few things that are duplicated. So that's sort of where we are. I'd be happy to deliver updates regularly if people would like, and answer any questions at another time or by email. Thanks.
Director Postian?
Karen and I met with Lisa Cruz to go over, as the Finance Committee, to go over what we're going to attempt to do in the next few months. We spent much of our time talking about the Forecast 5. We're going to be meeting with her once a month, and we appreciate her taking the time and spending it with us.
Director Gosa will give us an update on our MOU that we're working on with the city of Davenport concerning our SROs. PDQ.
Last week, myself, President Potts, Rob Scott, and the superintendent met with the mayor, J.J. Condon, who's an alderman at large, the city administrator, and then the police lieutenant for the SROs, to kind of go over the SRO program and what it's going to look like, and also how we can measure data and stuff like that, which Rob said that he would work with them on getting some of that stuff set up, so we'll be able to start tracking data, I think, by the end of the year. So we're moving forward with that with the intent of eventually bringing the MOU forward for the board to see as well as the city to see. And if I missed anything, Mr. President, I'll leave it to you.
You cover the waterfront. Any more board reports? Okay, we have no requests for open forum, so we'll move directly to the consent agenda. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes,
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
is there a second?
Second.
Director Snyder seconds. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Director Gosa?
I would like to pull out 4.04. I just had a couple questions on that one. And vote on it separately.
Do we need a motion to do that, or do we just do it?
I don't know. I think we have.
Okay. Okay, 40.4 will be removed from the consent agenda for discussion later. Director Klein Jerome.
I just have one question. When reading through the contract for 4.03, the contract with DW Network, it listed Keystone is getting that upgrade. We're not using Keystone, so I guess I'm concerned why we're.
You'll have to pull it. You'll have to
Oh.
pull it to discuss it.
Oh, I'd like to pull 4.03 to discuss.
Okay. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? We'll move to the vote on the consent agenda excluding 4.03 and 4.04. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the consent agenda passes. We'll move to a discussion. I need a motion on 4.03, please.
I move that we, discuss?
You have to move it so it's on the floor
Okay.
so we can
I'd
discuss
like to
it.
move 4 point, sorry, I just closed that one. 4.03 on the contract for DW Network Infrastructure for $28,169.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Beck.
And I believe the correct language would be move to approve. Is that correct? Okay.
Discussion.
I guess my question is, why are we putting money into Keystone at this point?
Mr. Snaden, will you? Thank you.
I don't. The only thing I'm thinking, and pass the buck here, TJ, isn't that Stepping Stones? Is that in regards to the Stepping Stones program is located there, the after-school program for kids? So they would be connected in the network.
Okay. Is that the only thing that's at Keystone is Stepping Stones and Bakery?
Yep. Yep.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay.
Director Goza?
I thought the intent of closing Keystone was to close that building because that's where the savings comes from, but we still have stuff going in there and we're gonna upgrade it. That's costing us money, correct? If anybody can answer that. I'm just trying to figure out why we would close a building but still keep it operational.
I don't believe that they're ready for the move to Brady Street yet. So I believe that we're still utilizing the operations center there. So when we go to this again, I don't believe it's ready to sell at this point. I believe we're utilizing it. Again, I do not know about the relocation to that. Mr. Schneckloff could maybe speak to it as far as the movement to that location for the upgrades. But I know that they had plans were to utilize the whole facility to sell the entire lot whenever we get fully moved over to Brady Street. But Mr. Schneckloff could speak to more of the movement of the program to a Keystone location, Davenport Learning Center.
So our Stepping Stones program that runs out of there right now was housed at Lincoln, and then the sale of Lincoln required us to find a space. And so that property was where the old special education offices are. That's where our Stepping Stones are. It's kind of been a more centralized location to enroll our families. And so that's why that spot was chosen. We're currently also utilizing that space as storage for some technology issues and some other things during the pandemic. So that's, in terms of upgrading that space for internet, we process a lot of payments out of there. This is the first I've seen that was updated on there, but I can say that there's 5 or 6 people working out of there, out of that office space in special education that was out there. And so that's the way that space is being utilized.
With the intent that it's gonna move somewhere else, so we're gonna
Yes.
put money into something.
So I think the intent, I'm not sure, is that space would be either moved or shifted, and so our Stepping Stones will have to be relocated,
Okay.
probably here someday.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around, we closed the building to save money, but now we're gonna dump money into it, and then we're gonna turn around and sell it, and will we get that money out of it? Sometimes I think we don't think things through all the way when we do them. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Director Beck?
I know I don't speak for the district, but I was under the impression that part of the reason for closing Keystone was not building related, that it was more related to the school itself. So I don't think that cost savings was necessarily the major driving factor behind that.
It was a budget item.
It is a budget item, I agree.
Personnel savings.
But I do share Director Gosa's concerns. I don't want to see us, I understand that we need to make sure that the internet is secure and appropriate for processing payments while Stepping Stones is there, because the last thing we want is to have a data breach or something like that. But I want to make sure that we're not over-investing in that network if we know that we're going to be moving them out of there within a year or so. If it's, if it's a couple years down the road, that infrastructure is going to be out of date by the time they move anyway. So
I'm comfortable taking it or having it come back to you in 2 weeks with a more detailed answer of what it actually is for. And that's, so I feel comfortable taking that off. I don't know the role here, but I'm comfortable delaying it for 2 weeks so we can get you a better answer of why the needs are.
Rudy's here. Rudy could probably answer.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
I guess
Mr. Snaden, if you have something to.
Well, no, Rudy's here. We could find out what this is really for. What the Network Infrastructure 2019 is really all about. Couldn't you address that and tell him what it's for? Isn't that the question that's on the table? Like, what was it for, or why are you doing this?
I think it's more why we're doing it.
Yeah, the why.
Not, I mean, because it says it's provide and install a new 6-inch front section on an existing 36-inch wall cabinet at Keystone.
The why.
We know what, the why.
As long as we have thousands of dollars of equipment in there that can go with us wherever we move, whenever we move. It is the latest, greatest stuff that we have. We're just utilizing this with backup power so that it too will have access to phone for the bakery and for the Stepping Stones program. When we leave, that whole stuff comes with us.
Okay.
It's all movable.
Okay.
But for now, it is needed at that location as long as there are people there. Will that work?
That's all we needed to hear. We got to keep the
Okay.
stuff.
Thank you so much.
Yep. I'm good.
Any further discussion? Move to the vote. Director Klein-Jerome,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. The motion carries. May we have a motion on 4.04?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes,
I move the board accept item number 4.04 as written and approved.
is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Beck. Discussion. Director Gosa.
I just had a couple questions. It says this is like the 5th change order, but to add heat to the boys and girls bathroom, was that not originally figured? Is there anyone here that's going to be able to answer that?
You guys may not know who I am, but I'm Josh Romansky. I'm the new director of operations at the Operations Center. So when I saw this in the agenda, I asked a question today about what it was about. So my understanding was the intent was to have fan coil units put in the ceiling to replace the old ones for the boys and girls locker rooms. It was left out of the documents, so they added them in later to make sure they can have heating in the room.
Okay.
There's also a hot water heater replaced, I believe.
Right, yeah, I kind of read through that. I just was curious if that was something that was in the original bids and stuff, and then it just got, that's why they were lower, because they left it out and other people had it in there, or because
They missed in the documents, is my understanding.
Okay. All right. This was your previous predecessor, so I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? We'll move to the vote. Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
No.
Director Klein-Jerome,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
No.
and my vote is yes. The motion carries. May I have a motion on the approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Beck,
I move that the board adopt the resolution recommended by the administration for the adoption of the bills from the bill listing periods of August 20th, 2020 to August 28th, 2020, and August 29th, 2020 to September 9th, 2020. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of August 20th, 2020 to August 28th, 2020, and August 29th, 2020 to September 9th, 2020.
is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Any discussion? We'll move to the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
and my vote is yes, the motion carries. Superintendent's report?
Yes, Mr. President. During the first week of going around to the schools, we know the first week is always, I'll get closer, Mary. The first week is always very anxious for everyone, and yet alone in a year like this, it was just amazing. All of the work, all the hands, and you want to sit here and thank individual people, but you know you'll forget somebody because it's building principals, it's staff, it's administration, it's everybody, and down to custodians and anybody. So just was amazing how well and how smooth everything ran. We're working really closely with Ingenuity, our online, and we've run into some speed bumps, but we are attacking those at every way we can. We've actually moved 3 administrators down here to the district office out of the buildings at the high school level temporarily just to get some support to our online learning, knowing that now we're not at 1,500 families or 1,500 kids, we're at almost 4,000. So we're pushing the resources where they're needed right now temporarily. And again, those I compliment the building principals and those associates that were ready to just say, yep, just let me know where I need to be and when to be there. And we're hard charging there. So it again, just amazes me how smooth it went. I was really expecting and, a lot of phone calls and things like that. And again, even our normal busing, you just didn't hear about anything like that. So it was just a great week, and I'm really proud of everyone. That's all I have.
Director Beck?
I just had a question. I heard through the grapevine that there was something about the pacing of the Edgenuity, and I hadn't heard back yet. I think I probably sent the email to Dr. Kobilski without realizing that he wasn't going to be here tonight, or without thinking of that. So it seemed like some people thought maybe everything was laid out right away instead of paced.
Right. The pacing actually was at a much quicker alignment due to our calendar. They were rectifying the calendar actually today. They were doing some adjustments then automatically would feed into our system. So I believe the curriculum is on that, and that should be taken care of by tomorrow at the latest.
Okay. So if I see that somewhere,
Yes,
I
definitely.
can say, it's been shared with the administration and they're working on it.
Should be complete here in the next day or two. So
Okay.
if you're hearing things much more past that,
Okay.
you need to reach back out to us. because
Well,
it should be-
things live on Facebook for a long time.
That's
so.
a good point. That's a good point.
Thank you so much.
Director Gosa?
I do want to say I have been getting a lot more emails now since I put my stuff on the parent portal. So the schools are doing a great job of sending that stuff out. Also, I wanted to give a shout out for Miss Corey Williams because I liked her little Facebook dance video for the mask. I wish more people would do that. That was kind of cool. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge her for that. And I think my kids are doing the online thing and everything's worked out pretty good so far. So thank you guys guys and gals, for all that you're doing in our district. We greatly appreciate it.
Director Postian?
Rob, I got a question as far as, so a teacher's presenting her material, her curriculum at the beginning of the week, and then he or she's got the other half at the end of the week. So that's a repeat each time, or they're picking it up online as the others are picking it on in person, correct?
Yeah. So if I was thinking of a day, there would be it's a 5 days of lessons that are happening. And if I'm day one, both A and B students are getting day one lessons. Some are in person, some are online, and then we're progressing through. We're not repeating day 1 and 2 and then coming back to 1 and 2 again.
So we're getting all the curriculum covered then, correct?
Yes. Then we're having to prioritize the standards, absolutely, with the time frame that we have, whatever. But yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Director Klein Jerome?
I have a question about high school teachers who are teaching all 4 blocks this term and having to produce an online option. Where is that time coming from that they can do that?
Well, in our plan, again, it is probably a lot to ask, but it was developed in, that's why we went to 6 hours and 25 minutes of a day, so that we had an hour at the end of every day. And then I know that some of them at middle school are assigned before and after school. That's different than the high school, but we're trying to free them up from any additional duties they may have, so that it's just that they're doing those 4 classes, but they're really, that extra hour at the end of the day is where we're trying to give them some time. And we're working around a lot of schedules, like some coaches, we try to work around coaches' schedules too. So if you were in season, you weren't getting the 4 terms at that point, but then also spacing them out. When you think of 80 teachers, you've got to make sure that 16 teachers are off or teaching that extra one during each quarter. So I think a lot of planning went into it.
Okay, thank you.
Director Beck.
This is probably more of a comment, but I did. My son has 2 teachers. He's in 6th grade. And one of his teachers, at least, is basically recording himself in the classroom. And so then he uploads the video after lunch. And so I really appreciate that. And if, I encourage and hope that all of our teachers have that capability. You can just see, he's just walking around the room, so there's a camera placed somewhere in the back. But that way, all the kids are getting essentially the same lesson, which I think is really a fantastic way to deal with this online situation. So just a shout out for creative uses of technology.
And off topic just a little bit, but that's why we really have tried to leave those teachers in their classrooms so they have all those resources when we're doing our scheduling, because many teachers talked about last year at the end about not having the resources to be able just to show something on a chalkboard, things like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Whiteboard, chalkboard. Geez, I dated myself there.
Okay, we'll move to items requiring action. May I have a motion on 7.01.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the Title IX Equity Coordinators as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director Klein Jerome seconds. Discussion? We'll move to the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Postian.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion carries. May I have a motion on 7.02, approval of level 1 and 2 investigators.
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the level 1 and 2 investigators as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Postian. Any discussion? Director Beck.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, and I don't know if maybe Jabari or Jamie can answer this, how do we choose who is trained as a level 1 and 2 investigator? I understand you guys, because you're equity coordinators. So that was one question. And then how do we choose, level 1 investigator, and how do we choose the companies that we use as level 2 investigators?
Good evening, Board. For the last 8.5 years, how we monitor our investigator ones, we select a pool of administrators, and those administrators are go through the level 1 training, and then from those pool, we just select a name to put on the board. So it's not really a big process on that. I would say the names that you see from administration, they've done it probably the last 5 years. And to your next question, the outside investigators, particular Sweeney, if I can say his name out loud, was a part of probably 4.5 years of dealing particularly with Title IX issues.
Okay.
The other ones aren't necessarily called on since I've been here, but in case he's not an option, they're used as alternatives.
Okay. So the people, just a quick question, the people who are the level 1 investigators, you said, so we have a pool of people who are trained to be investigators, and it's sort of on a rotating basis of who gets called up to be that year.
That's correct. From my memory, the only ones I've really utilized has been Sweeney specifically.
Okay.
But prior to that, I wouldn't know who was utilized.
Okay. But I mean, for the level 1 investigators, the individuals within the district, those are all people who are willing to participate?
Trained and willing to participate.
Okay.
Yep.
Just checking.
And got all their approval before we bring them before the board too.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Director Klein.
We have talked about these positions in the past and that we were bringing them all in internally, that we weren't paying people. Level 2, that's obviously a different thing. But there is a name on that level 1 that would be somebody who's being paid. So I have a concern about that. I also have a concern about some names on here. And I would like to make a motion that we table this till I get my questions answered. I sent them to Dr. Kabilski earlier and have not heard.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion to table. Moved by Klein Jerome, seconded by Gosa. Any discussion? There's no discussion on a motion to table. Right?
Would there be any negative effects if we didn't approve this evening?
Not at all.
Any other discussion?
Real quick, because I thought that this was brought up to us before as a budget cut thing, and Director Kleindrom had brought that up about, because I thought that's why we got rid of those, and then the associate superintendents were going to do it, I think is what Dr. Kabilski had presented to us, and so yeah, I guess I would have some questions for the superintendent on that as well, so that's why I seconded that. That was all I was going to say. Thank you.
Good evening. So the one individual that is on the roster that is not currently an employee, I was not aware that that was a budget cut at the time that this was submitted. If we could leave her on there as a as-needed basis, or I could remove her not to be utilized on a frequent basis. And then as far as the other individuals, I've not been aware of any other issues. They've been on there in the past. So if I could have those questions or concerns to address those individuals. And then as far as the other tiered services, Sweeney is our priority, and the other ones are backups in the event that he's not available.
Discussion? We'll move to the vote. The motion is to table. Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
and my vote is no. Motion passes. It's tabled. May I have a motion on 7.03.
Mr. President,
Director Beck,
I move that the board approve the recommendation to approve the contract with Power School in the amount of $135,049.09.
is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Discussion? Director Klein Jerome,
My only concern is this contract started September 1st. We are voting on this after the contract's actually started. And I've noticed this on several of these. I would like these prior to when the contract's going to start.
further discussion? Director Gosa?
Just a quick question, and I know it kind of says it in here, but what all do we use this for?
Power School is used for our accounting software, our human resources. We use it for purchasing. It's used at our warehouse, payroll, fixed assets. It's all of our business software.
So does it like correlate with Forecast 5 and stuff then, I guess? Because that's what we use Forecast 5 for too, correct?
Correct.
and stuff?
Yes, but what we end up doing is we pull information from Business Plus and then it's uploaded into Forecast 5. They're not married together.
Okay, thank you.
They don't talk to one another.
Well, they are married.
Director Hayes?
Lisa, could you please tell me what account is this paid out of? Is this a general expenditure?
No, it's paid out of PEPAL.
Pepper, okay, thank you.
Director Beck?
And I just want to clarify, Forecast 5 is only for budgeting, correct? This covers purchasing and dealing with human resources and paying people and all the things that we would need software to do, correct?
That is correct. It's basically our daily operations. Forecast 5 is kind of the frosting on the cake.
Any other discussion? We'll move to the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion carries. May I have a motion on 7.05, approval of the contract with
In structure.
Florida client?
You skipped in structure.
What did I do?
7.04.
I'm sorry, 7.04, contract for in-structure.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes?
that was Director Beck.
What? Oh, I'm sorry, Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the contract with InStructure in the amount of $68,323.25.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director Klein-Jerome seconds. Discussion? Director Beck?
Yes. So I'm actually really familiar with InStructure Canvas because that's what we use. I am really confused. I know it's written in here, but I'm really confused as to why we purchase software to be used at Assumption why they can't just do it themselves.
So the ESSER funds, Title I funds, Title II, Title IV, all of those dollars have to come to the Davenport schools first, and then we are the administrator of those funds. Okay. And so when Davenport schools got their roughly $4.2 million, 3.7 of it we got to keep, and the equitable share goes to our non-publics. Now, our job is to be the fiscal agent. We can't cut a check. They would like that. But the rules state that we are the fiscal agent holding those funds. And so there are certain rules that we have to follow. Because of COVID, that line that we've been using, these funds are, because of COVID, they're utilizing this inside of their online system, which is totally allowable.
Okay. So basically, they could not purchase it themselves. We are the ones that get the money
Yep, we
from
are
the
providing
government.
services to Assumption High School.
Okay.
So we administer this. We do all the purchasing. We go out. It is sometimes very difficult. I'll give you an example. When they want to purchase some technology, well, we have a bubble. Gary does an awesome job of keeping a bubble around ours, so we have to kind of work with them to provide that service to them. And so sometimes it's a little tricky, but this product is for them because of COVID.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Do we get an administrative fee from
Yes,
that?
we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do, and we max it out.
Handling charges. Further discussion? We'll move to the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion carries. May I have a motion on 7.05?
Mr. President,
Director Beck?
I guess there's nothing written here. I move that the board approve the renewal of Florida client internet filtering.
Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Director Hayes? Oh, good. Discussion. Director Gosa.
I'm just gonna ask some questions, so at least we're getting information on this, but I just kind of wanted to know a little bit about what this is about. Making informed decisions,
Database.
database-driven decision-making.
Right. This is the filtering product that we use to keep our SEPA compliancy in place. It allows us to provide filtering to all of our equipment regardless of the internet source. So when a student takes a Chromebook home, they're able to get the same filtering they would get if they were in the building, if they're on their home, if they're at a restaurant, wherever they're finding their internet. All of these products, all these devices, phone home for their internet filtering. What's kind of prominent about this particular renewal is that they've installed a new logic engine which allows us to offload some of the bandwidth components. We used to have a lot of hops to get back and forth to us into the internet and back to the kid. Now we have basically shared that information at the device level, so they can use their save several hops and save some of our bandwidth as well. So it's a win-win situation for us.
So is that, obviously it's installed in the Chromebook, and then so as soon as they get on it, like the kids that are at home doing it with their Chromebooks, they don't come across our
Network.
yeah.
Yes. Actually, that was the previous version. This version allows us to actually do what you had suggested, that data file is kept resident on that computer once it makes the connection, and then everything they do after that is the quickest path to the internet and not necessarily coming back through us. So we're ensuring that safety for our kids.
Perfect. Thank you.
Director Beck.
And the filtering, this is the blocking of Facebook and inappropriate sites and downloading applications and all that kind of stuff. Okay, thank you.
Director Kleindrum.
I read about Fort Dodge being basically hijacked, and is this preventing us from getting in that situation, or we have other things that also do that?
FortiGate is the umbrella product that we use. It does a lot of our antivirus and malware detection, those types of things. The filtering is another aspect of that umbrella product. I'm not really aware of the details of what happened at Fort Dodge, but I will be finding out.
Any other questions? Move to the vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Postured.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. The motion carries. We have a motion on 7.06, approval of driver's education contract.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the contract with Ms. Vivian AEA to provide driver's education as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director Klein-Jerome seconds. Discussion? Director Beck.
I just noted that the contract is actually for the 2021-2022 school year, and I wanted to make sure that that was indeed correct. Yeah. So we approve it now so that it's in effect the following year, which is fine. It's in advance. I'm good with that. But
Yes, that's the way they operate, is a year in advance.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Move to the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Postured.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. The motion carries. We have a motion on 7.07, approval of the bid for the LIS data cooling project.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the lowest responsive bid from Tri-City Electric in the amount of $254,340.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director Gosa seconds. Discussion. Director Beck.
Yeah, I know we've seen this recently, and if I remember correctly, it was the public hearing. Yes, thank you. I was trying to think of the word. But this is quite a bit higher, I think, than we expected. So can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, to the best of our knowledge, we were able to determine that the pricing on a lot of the product that we were getting went up, and there was also second shift work that had to be accomplished. We had planned originally to have this done during the summer hours where we didn't have to pay for the second shift addition.
Okay. Oh, and just to clarify, the closet cooling project, this is basically where we keep all our servers that generate a lot of heat, and we need to keep the temperature down, correct? Okay.
This is the follow-up to the E-rate money we got in about the amount of about $1 million, and this ensures that it stays functional.
Director Poston.
Is this pretty specialized work? Because I see they were the only bidders.
It's not specifically specialized work. Any of our electronic contractors or electricians that we've been working with could have bid on this. Some are a little better suited than others.
Director Gosa.
I don't remember, but with this project, will there be like a backup power source that if we lose power, then we don't have to worry about any of this stuff?
Yeah, this is focusing mostly on the control conditions of our closets to keep the heat down. The original project was brought in the UPS systems and the backups so that we can keep everything running even in the event of a power outage, as long as the duration is reasonable.
And it'll keep the cooling system going.
Correct.
Too. Okay.
Yeah.
Director Hayes.
You said we're hiring second shift staff. Is this something that could maybe be done over holiday time when they're out for winter break, where we can, go in during the day?
Yeah, it's one of those situations where we have to take some of the systems down, so it would definitely impact the quality of the education that was going on if we were doing that at the same time the kids were trying to get through the system and stuff. So second shift work is the best for that, to maintain educational quality.
Okay.
Any other questions? Move to the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion carries. We have a motion on 7.08, approval of contract AEA compensatory education.
Mr. President?
Is that Director Snyder?
Yes.
Very good.
I move that the board approve the contract with the Mississippi Bend Area Education Association for compensatory education as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Director Poston. Discussion? Director Klein-Jerome.
It's just an estimate. Can you give us a ballpark amount on this? There was no dollar amount.
That's the way we have been approaching it for the last several years, because we really can't anticipate how much compensatory education we will run into throughout the year. But I will tell you that it's going down as we have gotten over the hump of that first phase of compensatory education. Perhaps what would be helpful is if we would show you how much it's been for the last 3 years, and then you would have a better understanding of, or a better idea of what it might be.
That would be helpful to know
Okay.
what we've spent.
We can do that.
Thanks.
Director Beck.
And I can't remember, is this paid the same way that our supplemental special education money? We spend the money and then we ask for the spending authority? Or is this a little
Lisa,
bit
do
different?
you want to talk about that?
I'm honestly not, I'm not sure on that.
It's a contract that we have with the AEA because because we needed so many teachers to do compensatory education, and we were having a difficult time getting, for those of you who weren't here at the time, getting teachers, Davenport teachers who were available to provide compensatory education. And so we did a contract with the EAEA so we could throw out a broader net to get teachers from other districts. And also we were able to pay more by doing that. And so we would not, the AEA would not bill us until they knew how many hours, how much money had actually been spent. So I think it's on a billing at the end of the year.
Other questions?
So we don't hire any of our own staff. We go through AEA.
We do hire some of our own staff, but through the AEA contract so that they
they
get the
the
same
50.
amount of money.
Got it.
Director Gosen.
I just wanted to make sure I'm going to get you on record. All this stuff is up to par, correct?
Totally.
We'll move to the vote. Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Faustian,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. The motion carries. May I have a motion on 7.09, approval of contract for hearing interpreter services?
Mr. President,
Director Beck,
I move that the board approve the contract with the Mississippi Bend Area Education Association for hearing interpreter services for the amount of $1,106,500, and I'm going to assume that it is for the current school year, but it doesn't say.
is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Discussion.
What school year is this for?
It says 2021 school year. If you open it up.
I don't have a. Oh, there it is. Okay, I didn't scroll down far enough. Got it. Thank you.
Director Snyder.
I've got some questions regarding the wording in this. When you get further down into this, it says, one, I guess the 1.1 million is not for a specific person. It's for services. From what I understand, but it says there could be additional money if there is a substitute, if there's mileage, if there's, I guess I don't understand why there would be additional money for a substitute. If we're paying for services, we're not specifying services by who as far as an individual goes. I'm not sure why there would be extra money.
The extra money is, as far as a substitute would be the same as when we need a substitute teacher. You would be paying that substitute for that day and also still paying the teacher who would be ill that day. Hearing interpreter services are totally based upon what's in a child's, typically deaf or hard of hearing child, in their IEP, if the team would determine that they need hearing impaired services. So we're not sure where those students may live when they come in, whether there would be additional mileage or whether we would have students move in throughout the year. While we typically would know the number of students and who they are, there's got to be a little bit of wiggle room as far as move-ins, families moving to where they may go to a different school than where we thought they would, and so there would be extra mileage that way. I think we're pretty accurate at the beginning of the year, but just with the nature of the beast, families and students moving, people getting sick, we would need to have that language there. This is also, I remind you, is paid for through the federal weighted dollars for special education.
Do you know approximately how many interpreters this encompasses?
Because they come from the AEA, I can't tell you that. I can get that for you. Being their largest district, I know that we do utilize a good number of their interpreters. And it kind of depends on how much time that student would need an interpreter throughout the day. But I can certainly get that number for you.
And then my last question is, do you know how this amount compares to the last couple of years?
I do not. Lisa, do you? We can get that for you though as well.
If my memory serves me, it is higher than last year's by about $100,000, but I'm not 100% certain on that. I'd have to get back to you.
Thank you.
We are looking very closely at our hearing interpreter services, as is the AEA. And so we will be digging into some of your questions and others throughout this year.
Director Beck?
This is sort of a question that I think I know the answer to. It's my understanding that hearing interpreters are highly skilled, specialized people. And so it's not like paying a substitute teacher or a teacher. It's a very specific skill that requires, I'm assuming they require certification, or that we only hire certified interpreters. Is that correct?
They do require certification to be sure that they're able to communicate appropriately. I don't know that I would compare a hearing interpreter as being more highly skilled than a teacher.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean it that way.
No, I know you didn't, but what I will tell you is that they're very difficult to find.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I think they get paid well.
I have one quick, do we house hearing impaired students at specific buildings? It used to be like Eisenhower was.
Yeah. Eisenhower was the place for most of our kids who are deaf or hard of hearing. We have started to incorporate them more into their home school because most of them had their own interpreter. And so you could walk into a classroom and you'd have more adults than you would students. And so we have moved them and their interpreter to their home schools whenever possible. But we have very few students. And many of them are quite independent other than their language needs. So it's kind of a different special education service in some ways.
Well, I know we also have unanticipated costs, like I know sometimes hearing impaired students, they want to be on the football team. They want to be in band or orchestra, extracurricular activities. During conferences, we have to provide a hearing and an interpreter for those students at football games all the time.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and we never know if this particular kid is going to engage in those activities or not. And when they do, we have the responsibility to have the interpreter there.
Yes, thank you.
Any other discussion? We'll move to the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion carries. We have a motion on 7.10, approval of the contract with EICC for concurrent enrollment.
Mr. President,
Director Snyder?
I move that the board approve the contract with Eastern Iowa Community College for concurrent enrollment for fiscal year 2021, estimated at $400,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Gosa. Discussion? Director Beck?
I just want to clarify, this is our associate's degree program, correct?
It's a dual enrollment.
Dual enrollment, that's what I
Yes,
meant.
yes.
Okay.
Well, it's actually for all of our concurrent enrollment. So
All.
it includes North, but it also includes all those schools.
Okay.
Director Gosa?
Is this around the same cost as it was last year? Is there a little more?
Yeah, it was about the same.
Yeah, actually, I have that. The price per credit hour went up $7, and then for each class, so it went up from 168 to 175.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Beck?
And can you explain why the parts of the contract about the Canvas learning management system are highlighted?
So what I did was I actually asked them to highlight anything that wasn't exactly the same in the previous year's contract.
Okay.
And so you're seeing things that were not in last year's contract, just so that in case it brought up a question for you.
Any other questions? Move to the vote. Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes. Director
Hayes,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
and my vote is yes, the motion carries. We have a motion on 7.11, approval of the LEA homeless liaison.
Mr. President,
Director Beck,
I move that the board approve Martin Schultz as the local education agency LEA homeless liaison.
there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Discussion?
Could somebody explain what this person does and how this works?
So in our district, we were required to have a liaison, and it's required that the school board appoint. So this person identifies the building contact in each building, trains those building contact people, and then that helps to make sure that we're identifying the appropriate homeless students in our district to make sure that we are serving them adequately, because they have specific rights that are associated with being homeless. So this person coordinates all of that. Right now we're hovering around 100 homeless students, and we will probably get up into the 200, 250 homeless students, and this person coordinates their care in all of our buildings. Now, typically that point of contact in our building is a counselor, social worker, that can be an assistant principal, but that's what this person does. Make sure the training, that the laws and rules with this change frequently, and so this person stays up on that, creates the training, disseminates that training out in our buildings, and ensures that we're providing high quality services to our homeless youth.
Okay.
Director Beck.
And does this person have any special training? Is this person a social worker also, or?
Yes, this person works in the learning supports department, was a teacher, currently is going towards his master's degree in administration.
And so it's not like somebody was plucked from somewhere. It's a person who applied for the job. And
yes, if you've ever met Marty Schultz, he was built for this job. I'm very confident in his abilities to do this. Absolutely. He works very closely with Jake and myself. And so he's actually creating systems that are streamlining the process, using a lot of Google Forms to help turn things around much faster. So
Very passionate about it.
very passionate.
Director Hayes.
Is this the person that's kind of overseeing the Proposity program?
Proposity, Marty does work with Proposity, yes. So I would say Dr. Klipsch is the one that's spearheading Proposity. That would be a great presentation sometime. We rolled that into Opportunity for All and putting together a pretty cool system for Proposity. That's going to be a real game changer for closing the opportunity gap for our students in Davenport.
And my last question here says he's been with us since September of 19, so basically a year. Is this just officially voting for this position?
No. So his position in the Learning Supports Department, this is one of his job titles. Recently, on one of our curriculum Zooms, they released the timeline for the following school year, and this is the first time I've seen the board must appoint the homeless liaison in August, and so that's why we're getting it up there as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
So it's just basically us the district recognizing in public that we have a homeless liaison.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or discussion? Move to the vote. Director Beck,
yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
and my vote is yes, the motion carries. We have a motion on 7.12, the approval of policy.
Mr. President,
Director Beck,
I move that the board approve the recommendation from the policy committee on the following policy, 502.18, animals on district property.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Gosa. Discussion.
This is basically a policy. You'll notice it's marked up, but most of those markups, in fact, all of them, I believe, were done by Wendy Meyer, our attorney. This may end up in a different section of the policy manual once we have done some of our updates, but it's basically the standard policy that says what types of animals are allowed on district property and which ones are not. Essentially what you would expect, service animals are welcomed, but you can't just bring your pet.
Director Kleinstrom?
So if you had a farm day at school, that would be under educational, so that would be okay, or?
I
like the
believe
pigs and the
so.
goats
I think
come
those
in?
kinds of things fall under, if I'm not mistaken, administrative regulations. This is really just about service animals. I believe those would fall under a different, some kind of different policy. I don't know,
If you're having
maybe.
a kiss the pig contest and that little piggy comes to school, that's not okay anymore, or how's that fall in?
I don't know. Maybe Mr. Scott can answer that.
I don't think I have a comment on Kiss the Pig Day, but
I've done it.
What was
Bless
it
your
again?
heart. Bless your heart.
Kiss the pig.
This is Iowa. You know.
I do see them as separate. I see them as separate alignment. I don't know if where in the policy there would be rules around bringing animals. I think around outside of the administrative approval.
Mm-hmm. So I think I know I've seen in some places there is a separate. Some institutions have a separate policy about things like bringing educational animals. Say the zoo brings animals to campus for something, but those would fall under some other policy, not this one. This is just about the day-to-day.
And we have a policy that addresses the farm animals and.
That's a good question. I do not know. Would you like to put in a board request for us to investigate that?
Well, I can look through them and see if
I'll
there's
just
one,
write a board
but-
request for it. It's fine.
Additional comments or discussion? Move to the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Kleinstrom?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion carries. We'll now go to our discussion items. We're getting a financial update from Gary Sinclair. I might point out that this financial update complies with goal number 3 that the board has and the superintendent has. It's expected that the board and the district finance issues are resolved, and staff will continue to keep the district in compliance with all state reporting mandates. It also complies with the communication principles of our governance, which talks about regular progress reports and board discussion on established superintendent and board goals. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rob or Gary? Gary Sinclair, you're on.
Good evening. Thank you for the chance to present. Is my volume level okay?
Yes.
Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. If I move too fast, if my volume is too high or too low, or if you have questions, please don't hesitate to stop me. I will try to watch the screen. I would first like to thank Lisa, who has done just an incredible job in a very difficult situation. I am asking for information frequently, and she has been wonderful about providing that. So I want to make sure that I thank her for that. There are 2 topics that I'm going to talk about. One is a little bit about where we end the year and how we're going to report to the Department of Ed. And the second is the monthly reporting to help the board get a better handle on understanding where we are financially. So as a little background, we're going to talk about unspent balance. And really, unspent balance is simply the dollars that the district could spend that they did not. That's unspent balance. Now, at the end of 2019, the district had a negative $12,044,566, which meant they spent over $12 million more than they were legally allowed to spend. In January of 20, the department or the SBRC granted Davenport $9,275,489 in additional authority. This really was the 12,044,000 minus the first year that may have related for any intentional action of the district. That really leaves about $12.7 million plus any increases that the district has to make up to become positive for the fiscal year 20. Now, although we're not through with 20, I think Lisa is going to file tomorrow. We still are going to continue to look for changes, but right now, as of today, my numbers project the balance at a positive $97,571. There are 5 variables that could change that, and we could very easily end up negative. The variables that are left is called SBRC1. And really, that's additional cost, the additional we pay for English language learners. Our original projection has that at 1.5 million. I think today, Lisa sent me some information that may be closer to 1,456,000. If that's the case, then our positive balance drops to 3,000. It is very, very difficult to project where we're going to be. This is not final, but it is very close. Special ed balance is still a variable, but we don't think it's going to have an impact. We think the district is going to have a surplus, but not enough that they have to give any authority back. Now, I would point out that I think this year the district's going to experience a very steep special ed deficit. And that might be a topic we want to talk about to the board in the next couple months. The other topic is miscellaneous revenue. Probably the easiest thing to remember is miscellaneous revenue is any revenue the district takes in that is not state aid or property tax. Now, there's a few little variances, but from a board standpoint, that's the easiest thing to remember. Open enrollment, federal dollars, interest on district money. Those are all miscellaneous revenue. Now, we've projected that at $15,805,000 as of this weekend. We don't expect much change. If we have an increase, it will help us. If we have a decrease, it will hurt us. I'm going to talk more about miscellaneous revenue when I talk about unspent authorized budget. The last piece is expenditures. Really, we've made good progress on expenditures at $183 million. We don't expect much change. This is lower than what we expected. Now, a big chunk of this, $4 million plus, was our insurance holiday. So in fiscal year 21, our current year, we're going to have to make adjustments for that. The plan is to present where we're going to end this year and monthly reporting this month. And then next month, we will work with the district to try to come back with our new budget for the next year, for the current year. So those are the variables that are left. We are a long way from deciding exactly where we are, but we're a long way from 12 million negative. We are very, very close. I think we can make the case to the SBRC that our original proposal, we still expected to be negative in fiscal year 20, although I am positive they expected us to be positive. Prior to moving on, I want to talk a little about COVID-19. And my position is I don't know. I know it's had some impact. Things like Medicaid. Medicaid is down $1.4 million. Part of that is we continue to pay staff costs, but the staff wasn't there to offer services so we could get reimbursed. That's part of it. Now, to help us, we didn't have near the expense for substitute teachers the last 4 months of the year. We don't know the impact of COVID, and it may take us a while to figure that out. Now, I want to talk about some specifics so the board knows where we're at, and I want to start with revenue. Now, one of the tools that I gave you was called Appendix A. Now, I'm not going to cover that tonight, but I want to talk about Appendix A so you know what you've got. This lists all of our revenue for the last 3 years, a 3-year average, our current year, actually last year, and what that variance was. So really the board can get a sense of where we have been on revenue. But what I identified in your presentation was anything that had a variance of more than $100,000. And there are some very large ones. This is where we've got the biggest surprise on the budget. Miscellaneous revenue. Revenue that is not property tax or state aid fell by about $7 to $8 million. It was a shocking change, but you can see everything that is in yellow is miscellaneous revenue. The whites are not miscellaneous revenue. Now, the biggest change, which I didn't talk about this, but we talked about the 4 variables. Well, another variable is the auditor. The auditor can make adjustments. The 3-year average was they've made some adjustments up or down, an average of 2.2 million. Now, if they make an adjustment down, it will hurt our unspent balance. Right now, we don't expect any adjustment. But as you go down, you can see that Medicaid is down 1.4. These 2 items are local revenue sources. They are down $2.4 million. So you can see we're going to do a lot more investigating and reporting back to the board about why we had these big swings in revenues. We really don't know why some of them occurred. We're still, we close tomorrow. So this is something that Lisa has been working on, but we're going to explore further. We've tried to find every dollar we could. The more we can add to miscellaneous revenue, the better our unspent balance is. But you will see all items of revenue that have gone up or down more than $100,000. We will follow up in the future where we can about why those changes. Some we know. This $380,000 is we had less open enrollment. That one's not a surprise. So we're aware of that type of change a lot easier than some of the rest of them. Miscellaneous revenue is in yellow. These are all revenues that are not state aid or property tax, and they add to spending authority. Any questions on revenue before I move on to expenditures? We obviously have the same situation with expenditures in COVID. We really don't know the long-term impact, but we're going to try to measure that as we move. What I've included in this report is any expenditure that has gone up or down more than $100,000. Now, the ones that have gone up, like this equipment one, we're investigating that with the potential of moving some of those expenses to PEPL. But you can see we don't have a lot of items that went up, but we have a lot of items that went down. This 120 is teacher salaries. We are down because of the number of teachers. We're down because of substitute pay. So those are all changes that we've made in expenditures in the last year. Now, you have a document that's called Appendix B. And what Appendix B does, it takes all of our objects, shows you a 3-year actual, a 3-year average, fiscal year 20, and the changes. So if you want to look further, you can see those, but obviously the big ones we have included in our report here. So that's really kind of a look at where we're ending the year and to look at revenues and expenditures. What we really have to look at is unspent balance. That's what we have to report to the state on. That is what is legal binding by state code. Appendix C, and I want to look at Appendix C a little bit. It is actually the state's Department of Management's unspent balance. So you can see where we've been in the past, all of these different years, and where we think we are this year. In red are the variables. SBRC 1, special ed, miscellaneous revenue, and spending. This is the form that we will eventually file with the state. Now, right now, we're at 97,000 positive. You can see where we have been the last 4 years. So that's a great change. Now, part of it is the $9 million the state granted us in additional authority. But this is the actual form that we will file with the state and where we are today. Now, again, we've got those same variables that are outstanding. The biggest variable, the biggest shock, is miscellaneous revenue. I mean, that nearly $7 million decrease obviously has a big impact on our unspent balance. If we look at our unspent balance again, you can see if there's where our miscellaneous revenue has been the last 6 years. That's a gigantic change. And we're going to have to investigate further and eventually report on why that big drop. If this were at 17 million or 18 or 20, you can see we would have a lot more cushion here. That's our single biggest issue and our single biggest change going forward.
Gary, could I interrupt? This is Director Beck. I'm sorry. So this is, you were just talking about this as well. I'm just trying to kind of wrap my head around, again, some examples of what types of monies these would be. I understand private donations. It's my understanding that those aren't particularly significant anyway. So what kinds of things might fall into that category?
Okay. Individual donations is extremely critical and an extremely large impact on the district. So if we go up here, the things that you see in yellow are the things that are miscellaneous revenue. They're the biggest change. You can see right here, these two, the 1999 and the 1920. Those are both miscellaneous revenue, and they are down 2.4 million from the prior 2 years. Anything that starts with a 4 is federal dollars. Medicaid, First Century, substance abuse, tuition from individuals. This is the state's reimbursement of the district's commercial and industrial reduction. Another federal dollars. This is special ed, open enrollment, or excuse me, that's not open enrollment. The Microsoft reimbursement monies, safe and drug-free schools. So you can see a lot of it is federal dollars, a big chunk of local contributions. Down here you can see interest. Interest is down from a 3-year average of 182,000, but it's down, if you actually look at the extended report, it's down $500,000 from last year. So those, the things in yellow are the biggest miscellaneous revenues. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. So we do actually get a significant amount on the order of 1.3 million on average a year from private donations. And those
about this is 2.4. Okay. These two added together, one is other local sources, the other is contributions to donations from private sources. I don't know what those are, but that's something that we will investigate. On an average, 3-year average is 2.9.
Right.
Last year it was 527. So we need to figure out, there may have been some special programs, some special allocations. I don't know what those are yet.
Okay, so we're not potentially looking at miscoded monies necessarily. This is, I mean, it makes sense to me that private donations might be down, right?
Right. I talked to Lisa about this, and I think that was her belief. She's looked at everything from any miscoding.
Okay, great. Thank you. That does answer my question. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Unspent, again, we're going to continue to work on unspent balance, and we've got to inform the SBRC if we believe we're going to be negative, and that's something we're going to probably have to decide administratively in the next couple days. If we are not negative, we do not have to go to the SBRC. If we are negative, we do have to report to the SBRC. So that's kind of a closing of where we're at to end fiscal year 20. Very tight on unspent balance. You've seen the revenues and expenditures that have varied the most to impact our district. Any questions about that before I move on to monthly reporting? Okay, I want to talk about understanding monthly reporting. Now, I've written up an explanation of the reports. I'm not going to use this explanation because it breaks down each row, talks about what's most important to the board. I'm actually going to look at our current report and talk to the board about that. But when we designed this, when I worked for Forecast 5, we designed 2 monthly reports for Iowa. We believe these are the reports that the board needs to know about every month, certainly starting probably in October, maybe September, but prior to that, it's hard to get much of a grip on where you are. But this actually goes through each report, breaks it down for you, tells you what it is, and tell you what's most important. But I actually want to go to the report and talk about the actual report. Now, this is called the Key Measures Report. And what this does, this looks at the key measures that the board ought to know every month. Now, normally, this date up here will be the month that we are in, what we finished. Now, this says June of 20 because we're through the year. But normally, it will tell the month. So you'll know if we're reporting October, November, February, or so on. Line 5, this talks about the maximum the district could legally spend that year. And you can see we give the district, we give the board a history. This is 5 years of actual. This column, column J, the budget number is, this is the budget that the district submits to Forecast 5. That does not change during the year. So when we started the year, we thought Davenport could spend $188,198,205. The most important column, in my opinion, to the board is column K. It's fiscal year 20 projected. What this column does is it tells the board, based on what we have done year to date, plus what we expect to do the balance of the year, this is where we think we're going to end. Now, this is the end of the year, and this is what we think is the district's maximum authority. But in November, the board will be getting that exact same thing. If we were having these variances during the year, the board ought to be asking, why are we so different? Why is our maximum authority projected to be so much lower? So you get a sense of history and where we think we're going. ISB talked to you about understanding where you have been and understanding where you are going. Line 6, this is your actual spending for the last 5 years. This is the budget that the district submitted last November, and this is actually where we're at for this month, which is the end of the year. That's what we spent. The most critical number on this page, in my opinion, for the board, is this number right here. What this number says, that when we get to the end of the year, that's where we think we're going to be. We had thought, based on our budget, we were going to be at about $1 million unspent balance. We're not. And when we ask why not, it mainly does with miscellaneous revenue, which reduced this number from 188 to 183. In the document that I gave you, this number is circled, this 97,000. Every month, the board will get a report about where have we been in unspent balance the last 5 years, and where do we think we're going to end this year. If this number starts to become a problem, then we need to start figuring out early why that is. If we see it going negative, we need to make changes. We need to find out why. And then line 8 is really the unspent balance ratio. ISB recommends 5 to 15, not to exceed 25. You can see we're very close. But I will be thrilled if we end up positive, because that's what our goal, that's what we want to do. We want to break that cycle of 4 years of negative. Now, I'm going to stop here because this is really an important monthly report for the board. Where have we been and where are we going on spending authority? We do not have to wait until next October to know that number, or at least an estimate. I will stop for a second. What questions do you have about that? Very good. Now, remember, this number is still going to be a very large number, even if it's January, because we're projecting year in. But we also wanted to help the board on more timely. Where are we year to date? What line 11 will do? Line 11 will tell the board what percent of our total expenditures have we spent a year to date. Now, since this is monthly, in January, these numbers are going to be 40 to 50%. And these numbers are going to be 40 to 50%. What you're able to do is to look at where the board is today, this month, on spending. But to give you a sense of context, where have they been the last 5 years? That's an important line. Percent of maximum. Now, the year's over, but these will be smaller numbers each month. But you can see for these 3 years, we spend more than our maximum authority. This year, we're really, really close. That's this year. We're at 100%. Now, I think if you probably round that out, it's 99.9467. That's cutting it pretty close. But every month, the board will know how much of our budget have we spent and how does that compare to the same month in prior years. Questions about that part of the report?
Gary, this is Director Beck again.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that very much. And you may get to this later. So let's say for the last 5 years, we've seen, say we're at 60%, I'm just making up numbers, in April. Is there a chance that that was not appropriate, that we should have been aiming for, say, 50% in April, and what our average was is not necessarily where we want to be now? Does that make sense?
It does, and the answer is absolutely.
Okay.
Because the last 4 years, there's where we've been. There's where we ended. So it's likely in April that we were spending too much of our budget.
Okay. So
yes,
we can use that as benchmarks to try and get below in the future.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
So if these numbers are running at 60 and 70%, when you start getting this report next month, we hope that's going to be, well, probably in October, it's going to be more like 20 to 25 to 30%. We hope it's going to be under that percent. Yes. Okay.
Hey, Gary, this is Director.
Yes. Yes.
So I guess my question will be for like this year we're in right now, going forward for our next school year this year. Are we able, with the monthly reporting, able to tell? Because I mean, we'll have things that are brought to us for budget cuts, but then they're getting added in later on. Again, are we able to? How long does it take us to tell if we're trending to where we're spending too much? I mean,
immediately.
So we'll be able to tell month to month, or would it take like a few months and then we'll see the percentages higher? Or?
Yeah, here's my recommendation to the board is if you're going to have every month things up and down, but when you are going, you're going to set a budget. There's going to be a budget. Now, right now, we set a budget for this year at 187 million. We're going to come back and probably have that budget close to 190 million. But what board should do whenever there is an anticipated change is to ask the question, how does that impact our unspent balance and our cash balance? Before you make a decision to add or reduce, that can be projected. This is a monthly report, but part of what Forecast 5 offers the district is a projection model. And on that projection model, you make changes, you add staff, you reduce staff, and then it will tell you what the long-term impact of that is. So to answer your question, before the decision is made to make a significant change, the question of what is the impact on unspent balance and what is the impact on cash should be answered.
So that would be information that would be readily available for us to ask. They should be able to get that to us. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
The next section of the report goes back to unspent balance. And I'm not going to spend as much time on it, but every year the district creates spending authority. Okay? If you don't spend that authority, it carries over to the next year. But really, we encourage districts to look at that annual authority. What are you generating on an annual basis? Then, what are you going to spend? Okay, that's what becomes critical, is looking at what happens annually. At some point, we're going to build up an unspent balance. It's something we've been negative for 4 years. In a couple years, this is going to be significantly positive. We should not be drawing that down except for special circumstances. I don't want to call it savings because it's not money, but it's authority that was created in prior years that should not be spent in the current year except for special circumstances. So what this does is this section looks at annual authority. It lets the board know. So this will talk about how much of our annual authority did we spend the last 5 years. Look at this. The last 4 years, the district has spent more than their annual authority. This year, we've got that way down because we had to make up for the negative. But when you get this monthly, in addition to looking at the unspent balance we talked about in line 7, you'll look at the annual authority that is down here. And one of the things I did in the documentation that I gave you is I circled for the board what I thought was the most important. And you can see right here, I've circled that percent of the annual authority that we plan to use. If you get a report that says we plan on using 105% of our annual authority, that's a red flag. You ought to be saying, wait a minute, why are we doing that? And we may end up having to do it, but we need to do it consciously. The next section talks about solvency. Okay, what is solvency? Solvency is pretty simple. Solvency is money that you have at the end of the year that's not obligated. You may have money, but it might be obligated to pay some bills. Today, in your bills, you approve the payment of some bills. Likely, some of those were last year's bills. So the money that you actually had on June 30th wasn't all available. This number is what is assigned and unassigned. So you can see that over the last 5 years, the district actually has had a substantial amount of cash. Cash has not been a problem. It's authority that's the problem. And you can see, we see that even growing going forward. Now, you're a big district, and that should be high for unexpected. ISB recommends 10 to 15, not to exceed 25. My feeling is I'm more concerned about the level of than the leveling of. The level. So as long as you can keep this pretty consistent and realistic, it's good. But every month, we're going to tell you this is where your solvency ended the last 5 years, and this is where we think we're going to end the year. If you look back at the report I gave you, and you look at the section on solvency, this is circled. Where do we think we're going to end the year in our cash position? Also is our percent of revenue to date. How much of our revenue have we taken in today? Now, this will be a monthly, so it's just like the expenditures. You may find out that you're about 30% of your revenue. Well, you should be pretty close to that revenue. If you're not, then you need to ask questions. And the administration needs to anticipate when you go to a meeting. If every other year we've got 50% of our revenue, but we're now at 42, what's wrong? What's happened? Why is that different? So you'll get a report every month. Where were we the last 5 years during this month, and where we are this month? Very timely, exactly what ISB recommends that the board knows. Where have we been? Where are we going? The last section is kind of a bonus. And really, the board looks at unspent balance and they look at solvency. Because unspent balance looks at your authority to spend. Solvency looks at dollars you have that are not obligated. This section looks at your certified budget. Last April 15th, you told your public legally the maximum you would spend. Every month, you're going to get a report on these 4 areas. That's what you certified. You're going to get a report of where did you certify in prior years and this year, and what percent have you spent year to date. So this is going to be another one of those monthly reports. So you can see that at the end of 20, we spent 99% of our instruction. We spent 103% of our support, 103% of our non-instruction. Now, unless we amended our budget, we're probably going to get a comment on our audit about those 2 things. But if we know soon enough, we can amend the budget. This is a report to the board that says, based on what you told the public, for these critical 4 areas of spending, this is where you've been this month, the last 5 years, and this is where you are this year. It allows the board to say, wait a minute, our instruction has been at 55% the last 4 years. This year, we are at 62%. On $120 million, that's worth figuring out why. So this report talks to the board monthly about where we have been, where we are going, and where we are year to date for unspent balance, for actual spending, for solvency, and actual revenue, and certified budget. This one page, I think it's 2 pages actually, has what I believe ISB has identified as the most critical for board members to know, to understand, and to ask questions about. Before I go on to the second report, what questions do you have?
Gary.
School finance through a fire hose.
Gary, I don't
Yes.
think we have a lot of questions. You're covering a lot of the stuff we've been asking for a long time. This is very informative and helps with the database decision making.
Great. I think that in the next month, I don't want to commit to October. Typically, we try to get the districts online and having a solid budget by October or November. I know that Lisa is finishing up the CAR, but as soon as that's done, I know she'll want to work on this year's budget. The second tool really probably board members relate to more because they understand it more because they have checking accounts. It's cash. That's why it's just easier. What this does is this tells the board every month in these areas, local, state, federal, and other, how much money have we taken in every month? And what percent of our budget is that? So the board will know every month how much of our local revenue have we taken in this year, and how does that compare to the same month the last 4 years? We do that for local, state, federal, and other, and total. There are going to be months where we say our revenue is really down because we haven't got our open enrollment checks, and we have in the past. Or my greatest fear is our state aid has been delayed a month, or federal dollars have been delayed. But board members are able to see where are we in revenue this month compared to our budget, and what does that look like compared to the prior 4 years, the same point in time. The second part of that section, oh, I hid something here, so something is missing. The second part of this section is expenditures. We break expenditures down to these areas: salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, properties, object, and total. The board will see how much have we spent on each of those this month, and what percent of our budget is that, and where were we the last 4 years. Now you can see that at the end of the year, for salaries, we spent $114 million. And you can see that's less than we spent on salaries the last 3 years. You can see that our benefits are down. Now, it's all 100% because we're done with the year. So you can see where we ended the year. But more importantly, what the board will be able to see is on a kind of a cash basis, how much have we taken in this month, or how much have we taken in year to date? How does that compare to our history the last 4 years? The last 3 measures is simply looking at, okay, this month, what's our surplus or deficit? Now, we had for this month a surplus of $6 million. You can see where we have been the last 4 years, surplus versus deficit. Now, in February, we would expect our surplus and deficit to be in the same direction. February is a good month. February, we're going to have a high cost because we're probably paying open enrollment. We're paying our regular bills. We're going to have a high cost. But there are going to be some things that we're not going to get in. Our big property tax payments probably come in March or April. So we're probably going to be negative in March. But if we look that we've been negative other years, And what that sense is, it gives us a sense of comparison. Again, what ISB recommends, what board members need to know is where are we this year and how does that compare to where we were at the prior 3 years? Earlier, one of your board members asked about the prior 3 years. We don't want to be where we've been the prior 3 years. We want to be better. We want to look better. And our data should be that way. This line tells you where you started the year, and this line tells you where you ended the month. All great data. Now, this is all general fund. We provide the same information on all of the funds. Talks about what is our revenue, what are our expenditures. We don't give a 4-year history, because if we did that, it would make the report so overwhelming, it would become almost unusable to the board. That's why we focus on general fund. Now, we should look at these. Every month, we should look at what percent we're getting. You know, these are all 100% because we finished the year. So you can see that for management fund, we took in 2.6 million. You see for activity fund, what we spent. So you can see all of those funds. Actually, we move over, we see the other funds. So we have a report on all of the funds. Where are we year to date? But we don't give you, now, if the board member says, look, I'm really concerned about this, can you give us a 4-year average? We could do that. But it's just so much data that it becomes overwhelming. So this really, as I said earlier, I think board members relate to it more because it's cash. Spending authority kind of becomes a harder concept, but it's pretty easy to see how much have we taken in, how does that compare to the last 5 years? How much have we spent, how does that compare to the last 4 years? Those are the 2 reports that we plan on presenting to the board monthly. Hopefully I'll be able to present with Lisa for a while with your finance committee or board so I can address any questions. But there are 2 great reports that tell the board what they need to know, what questions they should be asking. What questions do you have?
Gary, this is Director Beck again. I just want to say I really appreciate what you've just done. This makes so much sense. And I put notes all over my tables. And I just want to say in advance, I'll probably ask some of the same questions every month because it takes me a while to internalize all this. But you've really put this with the rolling, previous 4 years, it really helps at least me put this into perspective and what have we been doing and what are we doing now so that we can see if we're on the right track or not. So I just want to say thank you for putting it together in such an easy to understand way. And with your explanation, your annotated explanation, it's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As I said earlier, there is, in fact, I put it in each section, like on solvency, the most critical role for the board is row 26 and 29. So again, I don't know that will be next month, but certainly November, you can pull it up, look at what those numbers are, be able to, and really, you will be asking the same questions. I know you got a lot to do. I don't want to keep you. If there's any other questions, I'll address those. Anything else?
Gary, this is Director Gosa. I want to thank you. This has been a very thorough report. It helps us out and understand a lot of these things, and I appreciate you walking through everything with us and setting it up so it can be a monthly report so we're able to read all that. And I do want to give a huge thank you to Tom Lane for recommending you. And I think you're a great asset, and I greatly appreciate all your hard work and dedication on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, as a former superintendent, I wish I could say I'm going to miss your board meeting,
Gary,
but I'm,
Gary, one of our board members, Linda, has a question.
yes.
Gary, this is Director Hayes, and I just want to say this few minutes that you spent with us going over each line item, I've actually learned more in this particular session than I have in 3 sessions of school finance. So thank you very much for this information.
Thank you.
Gary, I hope you weren't one of the ones that were teaching those school finance classes.
I plead ignorance. Well, have a good meeting, and we'll probably talk to you next month or the following month.
Thank you, Gary, very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, we'll move to our discussion item on board policy proposal, a first reading of 8.02 Code of Ethics Policy. Director Beck?
Yes. So one of the recommendations that we've received from the IASB is that we have a code of ethics. And apparently a previous board rescinded our code of ethics. I know Jamie's nodding his head over there, so maybe he knows the history of this, but it was before my time. So I am bringing before you, or the policy committee is bringing before you, a proposed code of ethics. This is directly from the IASB. We've all seen this before in one of our workshops back in the spring before everything shut down. And so we're just looking for feedback. If you guys are okay with this code of ethics, we'll move it to a second reading and a vote. If anybody has objections to any part of it, now would be the time to discuss it. But I am advocating that we adopt a code of ethics, as is the rest of the policy committee. So that is where we stand.
Any conversation or questions?
Director Snyder.
We had one that actually looked very similar to this in the past, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember we were going through this. This came up for review, and we had a heck of a time. I mean, we had board policies that we knew were more, administrative regulations that we could not get the board to remove. And then ones like this that we felt had validity, the board said, we don't need them. So with this, I think it's important to have, especially there's one line item in here that resonates with me that, it says the board will abide by majority decisions. You may not like every decision, but once the board makes a decision, you support and uphold that decision. And I think it's just important to have it in writing, basically, that this is what we say we're going to do so that we know essentially what to do.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. And I also agree. That's the one thing that was drilled into me as a new board member. But I haven't always felt that everyone has followed that part of what would have been our code of ethics if we had one. So anything else? Director Snyder.
Is this essentially straight from the IASB?
It is.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, we didn't change it because we felt like it was covered everything. They've done the work. So why reinvent the wheel?
Yep.
Anything else?
All right.
Okay. Any board requests?
Yes. There's a couple more coming.
Okay, from Director Snyder, request for information. What was the impact on budget from not having students and teachers in the buildings from spring break through the end of the school year due to COVID? Because the buildings were not occupied, there was time, expenses, utilities, those sorts of things. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I think he referred back to some of that too in the report we got up here. From Director Snyder, where should parents be checking for information updates such as last Friday's deadline to change their preference for learning format? Where was this specific information posted and updated? This is a request for information. Clarification for families within the district. Where should they be monitoring and what should they be relying on? Is there a second?
Second.
Website and parent portal.
Hey, it's okay.
I knocked out.
Director Klein Jerome, there's an agenda item, discussion and timeline regarding selling the former Keystone building. This would ultimately save the district money. When would you like this? The October regular board meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Director Beck, information request. I would like to know what the administrative regulations and policy requirements are for animals on district property that are not service animals, zoo day, farm animals, etc.
Class pets.
And this would be as soon as feasible. We have a policy on service animals, but should we have one on everything else?
Mhm.
Second?
Second.
All right. Administrative reports.
The only thing I know I had a question about Breonna Taylor, and I know thoughts and prayers are with the family, and I checked with the superintendent. Unfortunately, he did not have an update from the family to share with the board tonight.
Okay.
Breonna Taylor, I know the thoughts and prayers are.
Breasia Terrell.
Am I saying that?
Breasia
I'm saying
Terrell.
Breonna Taylor. Well, that name is in my brain. I'm sorry. I said the wrong name. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Yeah, Breonna Taylor's in my brain from something else. Thank you.
Director Beck?
I wanted to ask, one of the things we discussed in last week's board workshop was designating sort of 2 or 3 key takeaways from each meeting. Is that something that the agenda committee is planning to introduce at the end? Are we, at the end of each meeting, where are we on that? Is that
Yeah,
something we all need to discuss?
We didn't do that the last agenda committee, but we can do that. Can be part of the routine, what we do in the agenda committee.
Okay, thank you.
Because a couple of our takeaways from this meeting would be the financial information we received.
Right.
And the learning that took place there.
Right, and I just wanted to say,
That would be the key
I wrote
takeaway.
down my key takeaway was learning about reading
I
finance.
also wanted, before we adjourn, I wanted to thank Director Beck, who took the time to compose our board goals and our communication procedures in this colorful flyer. And I would point out to you that she incorporated the colors that are in the new Davenport School logo as highlights. And that being said, this meeting's adjourned.
She knew the right name, and I just thought it tells you.